Alrighty, Catherine, are you ready? Give me the signal if you're ready.
I'm
All right,
ready.
okay, there we go. Catherine's ready. Here we go. So thanks for joining us today, everybody. Like David had said, we have over 125 people registered for the event. And this is probably one of our biggest events. We are trying to bring people together here that can illuminate the possibilities in the region, what's going on in the region, and how we can take advantage of all the good things that are happening. So welcome Catherine Warren, who's the new CEO of Innovate Edmonton. Now, living and working in Canada, US, UK, and Europe, Catherine has served as a C-suite executive for publicly traded companies, academic institutions, and government business enterprises. Most recently, as Chief Executive Officer of the Vancouver Economic Commission, she led the team in attracting $3 billion in foreign direct investment to the region, with a portfolio including the Vancouver Film Commission, the world's largest animation and visual effects sector, smart cities technologies such as AI, 5G, and quantum computing, and the green and impact economies. In more than 2 decades as a tech advisor, Warren's track record includes mergers and acquisitions for digital distribution and digital IP, raising capital, and liquidity events for tech companies, consulting to national media funds, hedge funds, crowd funds, a lot of funds there, Catherine, and coaching executives on strategic growth and monetization. Earlier in her career, she was the startup chief operating officer of a broadcast software company that the partners then took to the NASDAQ and grew to a $300 million market cap. Catherine has a bachelor's degree in physics from Reed College in Portland, Oregon. That is Mr. Steve Jobs' alma mater, if I'm correct. I think he was only there a year. You probably finished your degree. He was only there for a year, but I recognize the college. With a focus on climate change and a master's degree from the Columbia University Graduate School of Journalism in New York, where she did her original thesis work on site at MIT, covering the launch of its digital media lab. Everyone, please welcome Catherine Warren. Let's do some virtual clapping, everybody. There we go. Yes, I know you're all muted. Virtual clapping. There we go. Welcome, Catherine. So hopefully you're unmuted.
I'm unmuted and raring to go. And thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you for being here. This is obviously a very interesting time in the innovation ecosystem as we go through some changes of various kinds. So let me ask you a question. You were appointed as CEO in December 2020. What have you discovered about Edmonton since that time? Are there any natural strengths to the region? Are there any challenges?
Well, many natural strengths. And in fact, that's what drew me to the role to begin with. So the bold attitude of Edmontonians, the desire to take risks, and then the real cornerstones of innovation that kind of connect to global megatrends and large global challenges. So for example, energy transition and the climate emergency, ag tech and food security, the health community that you have here, and advanced pharmaceuticals leading to public health and pandemic response. So all of those things were highly motivating to me. And since I started, I've really had a chance to listen to people and get to know a bit about the community. And sure enough, it's as good as advertised.
As good as that. So when we're trying to marry some of these big macro trends to the natural strengths of the region, you went through a number of different trends, macro trends. Which one would you actually focus on? Maybe 1, 2, or 3?
Well, actually, I would, in this role, like to position Edmonton as a global innovation capital that tackles the world's great challenges. So I actually would prefer not to pick or choose. It's about building an ecosystem that supports innovators of all stripes and ingenuity of all kinds at all stages. So for example, we often think of innovation as something that happens with 1 or 2 founders in their basement or in the garage. And of course, tech innovation does happen that way, but innovation happens In large organizations too, there are entrepreneurs pushing the innovation envelope in large companies that are going through a transition. And then, of course, in small businesses where raising capital maybe hasn't been the traditional MO, now with things like social innovation and the investors' focus on ESG, there's more interest in investing in other kinds of innovations as well.
So you're the new CEO of Innovate Edmonton. What do you see it as its mission? And how will your entity be different than the previous institutions that sought to invigorate the economy locally? Well, what's going to make you different?
Well, I would say that we have 4 big jobs ahead of us, and maybe you can tell me how that differs. Number 1, our role is to empower Edmonton's innovators and make sure that they have the resources that they need to be great and to be great on a global stage. Secondly, we're very focused on making connections and networking. So that could include networking within the ecosystem across different kinds of innovation strengths, or connecting to global channels, global capital, and kind of deal flow. So that's the next piece. We're also very focused on measuring the impact. So of course, these are taxpayer dollars. We need to be accountable and have those performance measures and be very transparent about not just our successes, but Edmonton's real strengths, and play those up in an authentic way. And then lastly, I would say we're focused on building Edmonton's innovation brand. That means working with all of you. That includes things like placemaking and place branding with the city.
And that was a word that you and I talked about just recently, this whole idea of place making, right? What goes into, what are the critical elements for that to go into placemaking, creating that brand for us to stick out? And a follow-up question on that is, if we're sticking out, who are we sticking out against? Who is our real competition in this marketplace when it comes to innovation and attracting that global capital and global attention?
So two big questions. In terms of the placemaking and the place branding, well, it can start at the street level. And when we talk about the importance of downtown revitalization post-pandemic, we can imagine the city coming back to life and having a public face for innovation, such that Edmontonians can really see local innovations in action. They can experience them tangibly and really have a connection to homegrown innovation and what that means for life and work, and really as a spark of hope and inspiration. Innovation attracts talent, it helps retain talent. We know innovation is what the foreign direct investment community is looking for when they're looking to land in a place. So all of that is part of place branding. And then in terms of who our competition is, well, we'll be competing and are competing in a very tight market globally with other innovation centers around the world that are known for, I'll just take Vienna, like it's known as a social, smart, and connected city, or Glasgow as an arts innovation capital, or Copenhagen as an environmental leader. So we'll find a way to play to our strengths on a global stage, continuing the good work that many of you have already begun, working in partnership with Edmonton Global and others.
Yeah, we had both Tom Ruth from the airports and Malcolm Bruce from Edmonton Global. Both of them alluded to the fact that Calgary is not our competition. In fact, regions like Denver and other major hubs on a transportation basis, innovation basis in North America are the real people that real areas that we're competing with. So Vienna is one thing, Glasgow is another. who could you cite in North America that would be a leader in innovation?
Mhm. Well, I've lived and worked in a few innovation capitals in North America, specifically in Austin, Texas. Portland, Oregon is also known for social innovation. You mentioned Denver. I was also thinking of Boulder as another innovation hub. And so, each of these cities has kind of played to their own strengths. And then there are, of course, large innovation capitals like New York in innovation finance and, extremely well capitalized when it comes to economic development. Los Angeles and to some extent Vancouver for film and television. So we do have our work cut out for us. It's going to be a great challenge ahead and one that I evidently Edmonton is up for.
So there's a partnership here. There's a partnership between government with entities like yourself, with the actual private enterprise, whether they be large or small, it doesn't really matter. Right? What is it that government can really do to help foster this growth of new sustainable enterprise?
Mm-hmm. We just saw a very good example of municipal government support for innovation. A couple of weeks ago, City Council confirmed a new $5 million for accelerators that will be in the city going forward as a result of the provincial government's request for proposals for homegrown and global accelerators to kind of spark a new wave of job creation, of capital attraction, of revenues for tech companies. So that kind of investment and that matching investment is something that's absolutely critical. Good policy, kind of carrot and stick, support for universities and commercialization of intellectual property, many, many things. We're very fortunate in Edmonton that we have such a supportive city when it comes to, I would say, putting those underpinnings in place. So just to be specific, like what is an accelerator for those of you who haven't followed that story? These are formal business programs that educate and connect founders to funders, to each other, to new markets, involving coaching, mentorship, and kind of seeing them through this very early stage all the way through scale up and meeting the different needs along the way. So that's the kind of life cycle of an accelerator and something that we very much need to encourage and now have the support to do so in Edmonton.
So you said the magic word. Would you like me to tell you what the magic word was? Scale up. So here's a question. So I find anyways, that the majority of topics revolve around startup. When we're talking about acceleration, innovation, things like that, revolves around startups. But there's a huge opportunity, I think, for scale up. And it's not like they're different. They're part of a continuum. Where should an institution like yourself, where's the focus? Is it the focus to create more startups or to ensure that the scale ups have sustainable underpinnings?
Well, we need to do both. That what's called top of funnel to really bring in very early stage innovators and founders, people who are just thinking about their first ideas. Is it something that could be piloted? Is it commercializable? How to write a business plan? These, very early stage, all the way through to growing them up through different rounds of financing, opening new markets, connecting to, global clients that are enduring. So all of that is critical. I would say that Edmonton's current strengths are more in the early stage, that top of funnel, and we can do a lot more when it comes to supporting scale ups. And that's very much the vision of these accelerators.
So we find that, it's my opinion anyways, that when entrepreneurs come looking to the ecosystem for help, the primary help they want is funding help. What else should they be looking for? What are the other intelligent questions that they should be asking from the ecosystem?
Yeah. Well, often the push to get investment is imposed on early stage founders. I can speak for myself in that area as well. When the focus really needs to be on building out the product or the service and generating revenues or building relationships with your cornerstone clients. And so that way you actually have a better value proposition to take to your investors or your prospects. You're going to be asked anyhow how you're relating to the market, what your sales strategy is, do you have traction? And unless you can counter with some real world examples, you're not as likely to generate funding. So I think it's because we hear like these big stories with back of a napkin pitches and investors just swooping in and piling on the dough. Those are moonshots, and it's not, bad to like keep them as a beacon of hope, but it's not a great thing to build a business around. You need the fundamentals, and your investors want to see the fundamentals.
Yeah, beacons of hope. I like that. Myrna Bittner actually just put up a quick note here. We wanted traction, market access, reference cases, and early adopters. Right? What could Innovate Edmonton do for her?
Mm-hmm.
What could you Innovate Edmonton? Sorry, I keep getting. I have the same problem with Malcolm's group as well, right? Edmonton Global Edmonton. But Innovate Edmonton. What could Innovate Edmonton do in the way of programs to help these people with early traction get more traction?
And I will just say on the Innovate Edmonton Innovates, you are not the only one. And in fact, we haven't branded our organization yet. So this is very much a placeholder name. So don't beat yourself up. So in terms of Myrna's question, we wanted traction, market access, reference cases, early adopters. So true. And often those should happen like on the home front. So we have an advantage in that we're not only a city with a forward-thinking municipal government, but we're a capital city. So we have both the municipal halls of power and provincial, and we can really use the city and the province as a lab, and potentially the airport and crown corporations and what have you. When early stage companies or even mid stage companies are looking for flagship clients, they can be very proud to say when they speak to international prospects that they've been deployed by municipal or provincial government. That's a level of due diligence that will carry the day. So that's an area where we can definitely help. Market access internationally as well. And then in terms of early adopters, no one has courage like other startups, and often other startups can be your early adopters. And through, and you may even forge merger and acquisition opportunities through that relationship and rapport.
Really good. You and I were talking earlier, and I had mentioned that I've been around this ecosystem for a while now. So in 1990, I was a coach at the YMCA Enterprise Center way back when, and that was the ecosystem. That was almost the entirety of the ecosystem at that time. Of course, we've come a long ways with there's so many different opportunities, so many specific incubators, whether it's food or whether it's gender-based. There's a lot of different things that are going on. And there's been a lot of new funding availability as well, especially in the angel space. Yeah. In more than one pitch that I've sat in the angel space, I often thought, great idea, who's going to run the company? So you have a technology expert, subject matter expert. They know how the science works or the technology works, but what they're missing is some business experience at that C-suite table. Somebody who really understands business, understands sales. So my question would be, what is the role for the ecosystem to provide this level of mentorship in order to help these startups not only get the advice, but also gain the confidence of the funders that they can execute on the plan that they're presenting?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's absolutely critical that, when you're going out to do a raise, that you have a well-rounded senior team, because ultimately investors are investing in people. And, usually that means the CEO, the CFO, and the CTO. And I realize when I say that, everyone got a mental picture of three men. And so I just immediately want to redirect and say, imagine in this scenario, they're all women. And that, you started out and as the CTO and you didn't have those other two buddies. It's absolutely critical to not only get the coaching for yourself in your own vertical, that being technology, but also to be introduced to a great CFO and a great CEO. And it's so worth splitting your equity in order to do those kinds of deals, because ultimately you're going to bring in smart money, attract customers more quickly, and kind of build the confidence and exude the confidence that you need to take your business to the next level.